The Alpha and the Vampire. Episode 4. She didn't know what she could have done without Dan, probably would have lost her brother in that fight. Truthfully, she didn't go to fight the Mandurago unprepared, she had a secret upper hand, fat thanks to Dan. The Mandurago feeds on human blood but for unknown reasons was hooked on hers, but she's clearly not human as said by Dan. She wouldn't boast of having a high IQ but she was smart and understood at once what he was implying. So she pulled a weak front, appearing scared and submissive, tricking the Mandurago into thinking she was desperate to save the life of her brother, so therefore would do anything. And yes, she was desperate to save her brother, but the real reason was for the creature to let down its guard. So when it finally did, boom! She striked and defeated it, or so she thought. Thanks to the sneak attack, Leah realized at once why they were called vicious and vengeful creatures. They never give up unless dead, and even on the brink of death tries to drag their opponent down with them. He's good, I think so, Leah said when she saw Dan crouch down to check on her brother. The Mandurago took blood from him but not much, he fainted from shock, Dan explained, examining her brother's face. Leah let out a frustrated sigh, this scene would haunt her brother for the rest of his life. Grab my hand, I'll teleport you both back to the house, Dan said, scooped Trevor up and threw him over his shoulder as if he weighed nothing. She didn't hesitate this time, grabbed his hand and looked into his eyes, conveying her unspoken words. She trusts him. Dan gave her a faint smile, tightened his clasp on her and did his mojo. They all disappeared, within seconds, appeared in the same room the both had fought hardly an hour ago. Dan placed Trevor on the bed, careful not to stir him awake. He had many things at hand to settle before coming to his. My brother can't remember this, Leah said, a troubled look on her face. She was pacing up and down, her mind all over the place. She whipped around, a hopeful glint in his eyes as she approached him. You're a vampire with an unbelievable ability, perhaps. You might know of others like you with a mind-erasing ability. You mean hypnosis, he corrected. Yes, you are right. You must know of one, right, she acknowledged, a radiant smile on her face. Dan breathed. All vampires are naturally born with a compulsive ability thanks to our dripping and amplified X appeal. Leah's face lit up with excitement. What she thought difficult was now made easier for her. Then compel, hypnotize, or do whatever you guys do, to him. I need him to forget this unpleasant incident. He should, in fact must never remember this incident. He's too fragile to handle all this. Dan waved his head sympathetically. I can't, he's being accepted. What? Leah's ears buzzed. She probably didn't hear right. You're kidding, right? But when she saw the straight look on Dan's face, she understood at once, he wasn't joking. Even though she didn't know Dan that much, but from the little time they spent together, she understood he was a serious person. He never jokes with an important task. I don't understand, what has his acceptance got to do with the compulsion? Moreover, they told us the acceptance ceremony was to ward us from evil, she asked, confused, her heart in turmoil. Yeah, to ward you guys from us. We are the evil. The ceremony made you guys immune to our hypnosis. Leah felt nauseous and weak at the knees, but she clutched her fist, garnering the little strength she had left. She looked Dan straight in the eye, blinking hard at the tears threatening to leave her eyes. Isn't there another way? She whispered. The man whom calls himself my father, his death devastated Trevor. Even though I pretended not to care about him, but I saw the way he was hurting. Trevor sees this place as some sort of asylum, a place he could heal and make new memories. Unfortunately, this place is the opposite of it. Little town is a hive of monsters, quite hilarious that I'm one of them too. You are not a monster. We are not monsters, we're just different, Dan growled at her. She laughed mirthlessly. Easy for you to say, but you don't come from a human family. Humanity is kind and all, but not when push comes to shoves. When that time comes, will they accept me as a daughter? Sister? Friend? What's the assurance I won't end up hurting them myself? There's a way, he interrupted, startling her. He saw the way she licked her lips nervously, watching him anticipatedly. The witch can erase his memories, and I happen to know one, but I can assure you, she won't be pleased to see me, Olivia said, nodding her head. I'm guessing there's a story behind the dislike. Dan saw the twinkle in her eyes and groaned. He just landed himself in the soup we dated, more like had a fling 50 years ago, but you should know vampires and witches are like fire and ice, we don't exactly go along. I broke up with her when things became heated and complicated, but she threw a tantrum, nearly severing my head. Okay, an angry ex-girlfriend, she breathed. Maybe he using she won't be pleased to see him was an understatement. The witch would definitely roast him. He released a wry smile. I'll contact her and hopefully, I'll survive today, but until then, I have a Mandurago to dispose, he said, and disappeared before she could say a word. Great. Now she has to stay behind and pray Trevor doesn't wake before the ex-girlfriend arrives. Leah was about to check out the room since she didn't have the chance earlier, but suddenly the door clicked and snapped open. Dan, you got to have. Leah saw the guy who entered pause, then visibly froze upon discovering she wasn't whom he needed. Wait, those eyes. You, he roared, face distorted with rage and hands pointed accusingly at her. Before Leah could comprehend what was going on, he slammed into her, pressed her against the wall with his elbow on her neck, choking her. She coughed, struggling to breath. What the hell is wrong with this madman? Let me go! Leah cried out. She smacked a hand onto his chest powerfully, successfully releasing his hold on her. Asher faltered back, pure disbelief on his face. Did she just use her vampiric strength on him? Leah bent over, clung to her neck, coughing and gagging, unable to get enough breath at a time to fill her lungs. A human sleeping on the bed at the far end of the room awoke, but only for a few seconds. He fell asleep again. Leah breathed, relieved, and clutched her chest, her pounding heart calming down slowly. Asher noticed her discomfort and body language. Jealousy tugged at his heart, but he denied it. He was just curious. Why was she concerned over the sleeping figure? So he ignored her and walked towards the bed, but she was quick to cross and block his path. Please, don't, she pleaded, hands stretched out protectively. An ugly scowl made its presence known on Asher's face. Why was she desperate to keep this human from him? Thanks to his height, he easily peered over her shoulder, hooking his eyes on the sleeping figure. His improved eyesight gave him the ability to notice the distinct similarities between the sleeping boy and his ma, the girl. They were siblings. What's your brother doing? She suddenly cupped his mouth with her hand, signaling him to shush. The sudden contact brought a blush on Asher's face, his cheek a burning shade of tomato red. Realizing bashfully what she just did was a little over the top, she withdrew her hand quickly as if scalded. Her face grew hot under his scorching scrutiny, so she looked away nervously, her heart a little bit out of its usual rhythm. He was conflicted. How could her touch still make him shiver? He could literally feel the spark between them, but she wasn't his mate but Daniel's. It was impossible to have two mates. So how come? Follow me, he commanded, avoiding her gaze cause it did crazy things to him. Leah didn't look up either, she just stared at her feet, gave a whisper-like response and followed him out. Lost in a reverie, she followed him at a slow pace. A lot of things were going on in her mind. She remembered Dan telling her about their leader, Asher. She suddenly wondered, if he was the leader of the Nicoli vampires, does that mean he was her boss too? Was she having a fling with her boss? Leah yelped in pain when she suddenly bumped into a wall. No, scratch that, a body, her boss back to be precise. Asher had stopped suddenly only to feel something poke him at the back. He turned slowly, the girl was rubbing her head, a pained look on her face. "Where is your mind?" he asked with an irritated tone. Leah didn't hear a word, instead her eyes were focused on the way his pink lips moved. A blush stained her cheeks again when the memory of their previous encounter resurfaced in her mind. She remembered it all. Initially she thought it was a dream, but seeing the dreamed character right in front of her banished such thoughts. It happened, it was real. Asher caught the way she gnawed on her lips and anxiously looking around as if she's been caught doing anything reprehensible, gave him a clue on what she's thinking about. Truth being told, his thoughts weren't clean either. He had this urging wish to just pin her against the wall, dig his hand into her soft silky hair, claim and worship that tempting lips of hers forever, drown his senses with her moans and finally have his way with her. It was going to be explosive, but then she wasn't his mate, this was all a manipulation from the witches. Whatever he was feeling for her wasn't real, it was just some pull, an attraction, probably a love spell casted on them unaware. So he snapped out of such ridiculous thoughts and opened the door to his office. "What is a mate?" Leah asked as soon as they went into some sort of office. Leah remembered Dan telling her, her mate ordered him to keep her safe. "I'm not your mate," Asher replied in a deep guttural voice. "What's the girl up to this time?" Leah scowled. "I just asked a question. I don't remember accusing you of being my mate." She had the urge to throttle this guy. Did he have bipolar disorder or what? One moment he's angry at her, the next, he's staring at her like he wants to eat her, the next, he's avoiding her, the next, he just wants nothing to do with her. "Fine," he snapped. "You want to know what a mate is?" he bellowed. Leah suddenly let out a quick cry of alarm when he suddenly scooped her up and walked a few meters forward. With his free hand, he swept clean his desk and placed her on it. She was tongue-tied, the words couldn't exactly flow out of her mouth. She just stared at him open-mouthed. "A mate," he started, his breath ragged, "is your other half, your soulmate, your companion for life. Someone you're willing to catch a grenade for, someone you want to woke up to for eternity, someone you don't want to share with others, someone you love endlessly, and someone you do this to passionately." Asher sealed her lips with his as soon as the words left his mouth. Leah was wide-eyed, she didn't know how to respond, he took her by surprise. When he didn't get a response from her, he growled and bit down on her lower lips. She winced from the pain, but at least it reminded her what they were in the middle of doing. Leah began to kiss him back with a passion she didn't know she had in her. The kiss wasn't slow nor sweet, it was hot and demanding, the both couldn't get enough of each other. "You're my mate, aren't you?" Leah asked as soon as she came up for air. Asher replied with a growl. "Just shut up and kiss." Leah made a low sound of pressure when he pressed her to his body. He was standing in between her legs since she was still sitting on his desk. She found herself wrapping her legs around him as their lips moved in sync once more. "Where in the world are?" "Oh," Dan said. He shivered when he saw the glare Asher passed him. "I'm sorry," he apologized. "Go on with whatever you both were doing. I'll just teleport back to wherever I came from." He gestured, persuading them to continue. Unfortunately, the passion was already ruined. Asher felt as if a bucket of ice water was poured on him. He almost did it with another person's mate. He knew himself, if Dan hadn't come in, he would have taken her now. The girl's existence was a pure threat to his self-control. "You're back." Leah pushed Asher away, got off the desk and rushed at Dan excitedly. Asher frowned. How funny, she was in such a haste to get off him. "Is it time to hypnotize my brother?" she asked, not knowing that a certain person was boiling beside her upon hearing her question. Dan murmured nervously. He understood the look on Asher's face. Asher thought he had exposed his secret to the girl. "The witch is on her way," Dan answered flawlessly, clearing Asher's misunderstanding. "Really?" Leah asked, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. He checked his wristwatch. "She should be here by." A sudden swishing sound had Dan duck to the side immediately, a dagger narrowly missing his heart. With a cloudy puff, an auburn-haired lady appeared in the middle of the room and lunged at Dan. "You bastard!" she cursed and gave him a flying kick. "You dare to use my summoning orb!" The kick met Dan straight in the face and sent him crashing to Asher's desk, toppling over a lot of items with him. Earlier, Leah had retreated quietly to safety when she saw the girl appear. Things between couples can get a little heated sometimes. Why is she so mad at him? It's just a breakup. People do it all the time, Leah asked Asher, who was standing beside her watching the drama unfolding with keen interest. "Don't butt into matters that doesn't concern you," Asher replied blandly. Leah was stunned. Was he implying she's a gossip? "You." She struggled to speak, but she just couldn't find the right words to use refute his claims. "Why are you so mad at me? It was just a breakup," Dan yelled, tired of being dragged about. "She said you took me to Antarctica," he defended for a romantic gesture. "I just never expected breaking up with you there." "You left me on Antarctica." "Yes, I broke up with you and left you there cause an emergency came up," she spat bitterly. "You left me stranded on Antarctica." Dan paused, disbelief pasted on his face. "That's impossible. You're a witch. You have magic to teleport yourself." She threw her head back, laughing mirthlessly. "My magic was exhausted. I had used them earlier intercepting witches who were on your tail. I almost died being out there in the cold, with no magic, no source of warmth. Heck! I didn't even dress warmly cause you just came and whisked me away to Antarctica." There was anger in her eyes as she narrated her ordeal bitterly. "It was only by sheer willpower and the Good Samaritan that found me, is that I'm alive today, yet you ask me why I'm so mad at you?" Dan was shell-shocked. So this was why she hated him so much. He had left her there thinking she still had her magic with her. He knew leaving that place was just a piece of cake for her. Unfortunately, she had used up her magic protecting him. Although it's being years after the Great War and the Purge, but it was almost impossible to witness a solid relationship between vampires and many other supernatural creatures. Vampires were viewed as a curse, an abomination, so a relationship with one of them was prone to discrimination. Immediately the treaty was signed, it was no longer a crime for a vampire to date other supernatural creatures, mostly the witches and the werewolves, but it was often frowned upon and some often took their dislike to the extreme. Dan did not break up with her because he wanted to, but he was forced to. It was break up or lose her. But she didn't have to know that. He was taking that secret to the grave. "Hello Sabrina," someone said from behind. Sabrina turned around only to discover it was the infamous vampire leader. "You're still as dashing as ever." Sabrina eyes the vampire who took her hand and placed a kiss on it. "You're still as dramatic as ever, and by the way, you're paying for the damages," Asher replied. Sabrina rolled her eyes like I would. She scoffed until her eyes rested on a girl relaxing against the wall at a corner of the room. "Who's she?" she asked curiously. "Asher's ma." guessed. Dan rephrased his reply when he saw the glare Asher was giving him. Leah's ears perked up when she heard them discussing about her. She stood back because she didn't want to appear as a gossip. Asher really knew how to zero a person's morale. "Leah," Dan called, gesturing with his finger for her to come over. She reluctantly came, throwing daggers at Asher, who turned his head to the side claiming innocence. "Hi, I'm Leah." She stretched her hand for a handshake. "Sabrina," she replied, enveloping her hand in a firm and warm handshake. Sabrina frowned slightly when her witch senses tingled. This girl was super dangerous, but she covered it up with a smile. "Why did you summon me?" "We need you to hypnotize her brother. Kid saw something he shouldn't have seen and she doesn't think he can handle it," Dan explained. Sabrina turned to face Leah seriously. "You want to wipe his memories?" Leah stared at her confused. "Can't you do that?" "Well, hello, this is Little Town, a haven for supernaturals, which you clearly are one of them, though I can't tell what exactly you are," she breathed. "But the point is, as far as you're a supernatural, he'll keep getting involved with or without your knowledge, and trust me, there are people and creatures out there who would try to involve him even if he doesn't want to." Leah pressed her temple. This was more complicated than she thought. Sabrina was right. Because of her, her dear brother was dragged into this Mandurago mess. "It's better he knows the truth than keeping him in the dark," Sabrina concluded, staring her straight in the eye. Leah frowned. Would Trevor accept her the way she was? She couldn't tell. They just reconciled recently. "No, take it away," Leah replied firmly. Sabrina sighs. "Fine then, but I have to warn you, if he ever gets an idea of the supernaturals, this memory I'm about to conceal will come rushing back at him and it will be amplified intensely." Leah gulped nervously. Was she making the right decision? "Do it all right," she claps. "Get the boy." Dan nodded and disappeared. Unfortunately, he returned seconds later without the boy, a huge scowl on his face. "He's not there." "What do you mean he's not there?" Leah retorted. "He left." Leah was panicking. Where could her brother have gone in such a state? "Have you checked the cameras?" she asked Dan, who scratched his head awkwardly. Leah noticed the weird look on his face and felt a bad premonition at once. We don't have." "I didn't install cameras," Sabrina chortled by the side while Leah almost went ballistic. "You don't have cameras, in this large mansion of yours?" she swore, gesturing wildly with her hands. "Actually, the mansion belongs to Asher," we just live in it." Leah shot daggers at the idiot, whom clearly was still in the mood to joke around. "We're supernaturals, we got our ability to protect us, not some technological gadget," Dan defended. Leah took a deep breath. They depended on their abilities, yet her brother disappeared right under their noses. "Get Zukai," Asher finally said after a long time of silence, saving Leah from bouncing on Dan. "Zukai?" Dan asked, shocked. Though it would surely take time to track down the boy, but he was positive he could find Trevor. But summoning Zukai, wasn't it a little over the top? Dan tisk 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 and shaked his head. Mentality, even though Asher pretends not to care about the girl, but he was head over heels in love with her. Zukai wasn't just a common pure blood, but one of Asher's strongest warriors, and was always summoned when there's a difficult or life-threatening mission. Immediately Asher pressed Dan when he saw the hesitation on his face. "Fine," Dan retorted and left. "Who's Zukai?" Leah whirled on Asher, who was leaving the office to go investigate the scene of the escape. "One of my men who would be able to track down your brother." Asher spat, hardly passing her a glance. "You should pray your brother doesn't cause trouble." Sabrina laughed, following along. She seemed to be enjoying this. "What do you mean?" Leah asked, brows furrowed with confusion. Asher grunted by the side, obviously displeased, but didn't bother to reply. "We hope your brother doesn't go telling tales to strangers. We don't want an unnecessary vigilante." "The hunters are enough for that weight," Leah said, held Sabrina's arm, halting her movement at once. "Are you saying my brother might unnecessarily create a human vigilante?" "You heard me right, baby girl." Sabrina says this is why the council keeps the existence of the supernaturals away from humans. Nobody wants a repetition of the Salem witch trials. Wait a minute, that prosecutions of people accused of witchcraft was caused by a human spilling his guts? Leah asked, wide-eyed. Yeah, every witch knows that story," Sabrina responded in a sing-song voice. "Witch heals human from deadly disease out of sympathy. Human goes spilling the beans to others, then false accusations, religious extremist arises, bam, witch hunts begins." Leah realized at once how serious the situation was. Maybe if she had a chance to talk with her brother before he left, it would have been a lot better. "He left 20 minutes ago," Asher commented. "He stood in the middle of the room, eyes closed and arms outstretched. What's he doing?" "Shush, don't distract him." Sabrina hushed Leah, pressing her finger against her lips. Leah pressed her lips together in an effort to remind herself not to ask questions anymore. "He shouldn't be far, but it'll take time to find him," Asher explained. "This time, he was done with his meditation?" "What were you're here," Asher said, interrupting her. Leah felt a gust of wind behind her and turned around only to see a voluptuous blue-haired lady staring back at her. Seconds later Dan appeared beside her. Leah was a bit confused. "I thought Zukai is a man, and I thought I've had enough of mysteries already, but men, you reek of it," Zukai said, circling her and sniffing her around like a sniffer dog. If there was one thing Leah noticed about pure bloods, it was the fact they all were pale and chalky white and had weird purplish bag under their eyes, as if they haven't slept for a century. Dan claimed she was a vampire, but she looked absolutely nothing like them, though she had to admit her skin was a bit fairer than before, but not to the point of being ridiculously pale. If not for the eye color thing, changes to her body and the feeding, she wouldn't have believed a thing Dan said. "You smell so good that I could have you for dinner." Zukai swooned all over Leah. "That's enough. Dan rebuked Zukai when he noticed Leah was becoming a little bit uncomfortable. He grabbed Zukai by the arm and tried to pull her away, but she hissed at him, baring razor-sharp fangs at him with flaring eyes. Dan narrowed his eyes. The girl's scent was probably affecting him too. Without warning, he grabbed Zukai and disappeared. Leah breathed heavily, finally understanding what was going on. This was the third time in a day she was told she smelled good. Was her smell that good and addictive? Asher's green eyes narrowed into slits. As he looked at her, he rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. The girl's scent was too strong. He'll have to trouble Sabrina to create a charm that would hide her scent. If Zukai, one of his strongest, couldn't control herself, what more Gideon? Moments later, Dan appeared with Zukai, whom was drenched from head to toe. What in the world did Dan toss her into? Her see-through dress clung to her body, exposing her curves. Even the straight Leah felt attracted to this woman. Asher smacked his forehead, shamed to the core. I need the Hizukai right now. He growled, a hint of irritation in his voice. Fine. Zukai whined suddenly. Leah witnessed the unbelievable happen before her very eyes. Zukai began to transform. The changes began with her hair, arms, legs, face and so forth. Within seconds, a tall, burly, gorgeous, blue-haired guy stood before them. Leah was so struck by what happened, she stared at him open-mouthed. What? Did she? She struggled to speak. I know, darling. Been there. Sabrina smiled down at her. Zukai has genetic chimerism. They were supposed to come out as twins, but unfortunately the male absorbed the female in the womb, Dan explained when he couldn't take Sabrina's teasing anymore. Leah couldn't exactly explain how she felt. She was having a roller coaster of emotions right now. She felt stunned, then awed, next sad and finally curious. Dan understood her curiosity and continued. Fortunately, when his ability began to manifest, his supposed dead sister began to form her own consciousness inside him. Soon enough she could manifest physically. Leah fully understood what chimerism was, a rare disorder in which a person has two sets of DNA, but it was more prominent in animals than humans. She just didn't know vampires experiences that too. So which of them exactly has the name, Zukai? I heard Asher calling him. Hizukai, she asked out of pure curiosity. Both Dan snorted a laugh. The two stubborn refused to choose different names, so we just add the he and the she to differentiate one from the other. Oh, she nodded her head in understanding, but her attention was diverted when she saw Asher swiftly drag the duvet off the bed Trevor slept on earlier and tossed it at Zukai. He murmured, "Trace it." Leah frowned. "Trace it?" Her question directed at Dan. Sabrina, who was standing with her arms folded across her chest, took it upon herself to explain this time. Zukai has the psychometric ability, the power to perceive the residual information of an object or person. He can trace someone through clairsentient contacts, so he can sense where Trevor is just by touching the object he used. Sabrina shrugged. "Pretty much that, or more." More. Leah arched a brow. Sabrina gave her a ridiculous look. "This are vampires we are talking here. Their powers keep growing. Today it might be tracing by touch, who knows? Tomorrow, he might be able to create telepathic link with anyone by holding an object that's connected to them." As she continued to listen, her expression molded into unbelievable awe. If truly vampires could do such things, then shouldn't it be the same with her? Aside from her improved reflexes and senses, she didn't feel anything else. Did this have to do with the fact she was different from other converts? He's in an alley, he looks scared. Zukai said, his eyes was shut tight in concentration while his hand grabbed the duvet strongly. His lips are shaking, he's asking for something, Zukai continued, but unknown to him, he invoked a certain emotion in someone. Leah gazed up at Zukai wide-eyed, did he just? He can't tell what your brother is thinking or feeling, but he can read his expression, Dan explained as if he knew what she was about to ask. I need to get to my brother now, Leah said, she's had enough of staying back and doing nothing. Where are you going? Asher asked, grabbed her arm and stopped her from making another move. Let me go. She growled and glared at him. You think I'm doing nothing here? He asked, a little hint of pain in his voice. Fine, he said and crossed his arms. Let's say you go out, how are you going to find him? Sniff around? I'll find him my own way, she retorted firmly. And you're not going anywhere unprepared and unprotected, especially not with your scent driving every vampire crazy. He commanded sharply. For the first time in her life, Leah realized the power the command of an alpha male carried. It was firm, indisputable and mighty, she couldn't even move a muscle. Not to mention the fact that as tall as she was, this guy still towered over her. Fine, then she gritted her teeth and gave up her solo mission. Almost immediately Zukai awoke with a loud gasp. I know where he is. He breathed. Describe it and I'll take you there, Dan said, listening intently as Zukai gave details of what he saw. I'm coming along, Leah ordered, not even giving them a chance to protest. Fine, I'll take you and Zukai first, before coming back for the others, Dan said after getting a go-ahead nod from Asher. He knew his powers hasn't evolved to the extent of transporting such a large mass at once. Let's do this, Leah muttered and held onto Dan. Zukai did the same, and soon enough, they saw themselves in the middle of some street. Leah winced as soon as the sunlight hit her eyes. She looked down abruptly. She forgot how sensitive her eyes were to the sun. What's wrong? Dan asked with concern, noticing the change in her demeanor. Nothing, she pulled up a fake smile. Wait for the others, they'll be here in a twinkle of an eye, he said, disappearing right away. I'm out here, she said as soon as Dan left. They were in some busy street with lots of buildings and stalls. She wondered which alley her brother was at the moment. All right. Wait, what? Zukai said, confused, but the girl was already walking ahead, so he grabbed her hand at once. What are you doing? Going to find my brother, she spat, jerked her hand free and darted past the dumbfounded Zukai. He rolled his eye towards heaven irritably. He felt his other half inside him stirring restlessly. She wants to come out. Fine then, he mused. Perhaps she would be able to handle the girl perfectly. You know, a voice nudged Leah, scaring her. Still walking briskly, she turned, shocked to discover that Zukai was now as she. Her dress was no longer wet and fluttered with the wind. You're lucky, old-fashioned. Dan doesn't use his psychic ability a lot, Zukai said, her accent a mesmerizing tone to the ears. Else he would have know you're up to no good like I care, Leah snorted. You seriously don't know how temptingly delicious you are to me right now? Zukai murmured, licking her lips. Leah shivered but ignored her. She knew Zukai would not try anything stupid, especially not in this street swarming with people. Leah looked up. The sun wasn't hurting her eyes much cause it was going down. Was it evening already? She suddenly wondered what her mom was doing. She didn't have to worry about her mom searching for them. She knew the vampires must have covered up for them, else she wouldn't be so relaxed. Trevor, she called, looking around in the first alleyway she could find. She hasn't mastered her sense of smell yet, so she couldn't just sniff him out. This is going to be fun, Zukai sighed exaggeratedly. She immediately took Leah by the arm and began to drag her away. What are you doing? She yelled, fighting her hold, getting inquisitive glances from few passers-by. But Zukai laughed it off, making it seem like a rough play between friends. This is not the alley my brother saw, besides I might have picked up your brother's scent and know how to use it, unlike you. Leah couldn't say a word. She obediently got dragged along until they stopped in a dim alley that ran between two buildings, but the end was closed and a perfect place for someone in hiding. The place reeked of waste matters. There were several recycle bins overflowing with dirts, making the place a total mess. Leah frowned. Her brother hid here? She quickly maneuvered her way in when her eyes caught a moving shadow. Trevor, she called softly when she saw him crouched down beside a recycle bin, a banana peel resting on his shoulder. No, don't bite. Trevor stared at her, wide-eyed and shaking. Leave my sister alone! He cried out. It's me, Trevor, she said, and tried to touch him, but he crawled further away in fear. Gee, give me my sister, don't hurt her. Guilt ate at her. It was her fault her brother turned out this way. If she had not. Suddenly she gripped Trevor's shoulder hard, her fingers dug into his skin and yelled at him. It's me, Leah. Your sister. Trevor slightly froze, blinked repeatedly before recognition dawned on him. I thought you were dead. He squeezed her closer to him and began to sob. Leah clung to him tightly as if her life depended on it. She swallowed down a sob and blinked away tears from her eyes. She felt someone beside her and turned to see Sabrina staring at them with an expression she couldn't exactly describe. Now, Leah mouthed and Sabrina nodded in understanding. Hey, Jenny called as soon as she answered the door. You guys are home late? Until her inquiring hazel eyes rested on the young man behind them. Don't tell me you made a new boyfriend already, Leah? She blurted out before realizing it. Leah, who was about to introduce the guest, stared at her mom open-mouthed while Trevor coughed awkwardly, looking away. Mom! She whined and met her mom's gaze, an embarrassing blush on her cheeks. He's our principal, Leah choked down a sharp response. Principal? Jenny shot back wide-eyed. Leah gestured a positive response with her head while cringing inwardly. Way to go, Mom! Jenny stood in stunned silence, too shocked by her earlier outburst to think of a response. Perhaps, if she had thought before speaking, it probably wouldn't have come to this. But who would blame her? She never thought her kid's principal would be this young, fit and god. Those green eyes! Asher stared at this scene amused. He never thought coming to her place would be this entertaining. Principal Asher, he said, stretched out his hand for a handshake, hoping this would help ease the tension hovering around. Embarrassed, Jenny cleared her throat. Glad to make your acquaintance, Principal Asher. I'm MRS Jenny, she said, accepting his hand in a handshake, not giving much concentration to his cold hands. Forgive my manners, you may come in, she said, and let them in, assuming the role of a proper hostess. Damn you tongue, Jenny scolded inwardly and locked the door. Leah led Principal Asher into the living room, wondering what this guy was up to. After putting Trevor in hypnosis, Sabrina erased every memory of the Mandurago attack and anything else related to the supernatural. The only thing he remembered was the fact he went to school, had a great time in class and got invited to the principal's place alongside his sister. He even forgot the kiss with the hot girl. "You have a nice place." Asher activated his flattering skill. Well, he didn't even need to try hard, Jenny was bewicked already. "Thanks, Principal Asher." Jenny giggled, a bit exaggerated, if one might say, and tugged at her hair shyly. "What is wrong with our mom today?" Trevor asked, feeling goosebumps all over his arm. Leah shrugged, but inwardly she was boiling with anger. Why was her mom smiling at Asher like that? Also, why was that stupid Asher encouraging her mom? As a principal, he should be strict, grim, and formal. And she's not saying all this because she's jealous. She's totally not jealous. Asher was having a good conversation with the girl's mother when he felt a murderous intent coming from someone. He consciously turned around and their gaze met and held. Though her expression was calm but her eyes spoke of a storm, it was wavering and destructive. "She's angry." Why was she angry? And approaching them? "Mom, we've bothered the principal a lot today," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "so I think it's high time he left already." If Asher didn't know of her killing intent earlier, he would have thought the girl genuinely cared about him, cause the way she portrayed her feelings could even fool the best performer into believing her. What nonsense! Jenny laughed it off. "I'm sure Mr. Asher would not mind staying a while." Leah's brow raised while the corners of her mouth quirked. It went quickly from Principal Asher to Mr. Asher. Asher would have settled down for more if he hadn't seen the look on Leah's face. Her expression was interestingly becoming akin to a Grim Reaper's. "I'm sorry, but I have an important meeting right now," he answered politely, and to emphasize his words, he lifted his hand and checked his luxurious Vacheron Constantin wristwatch. "Fine," then Jenny reluctantly agreed. She was hoping to know more about this young principal. "And I'm sorry for keeping your children." "Oh, no need to apologize. I got noticed earlier by the school authorities. Besides, it's a privilege that my wonderful kids found grace in your sight," Jenny said, pressed Leah to her side and ran her hand through her hair, disheveling the hair. Leah spent a lot of time tidying in Dan's room. Leah cringed and glared at her mom. Why was she treating her like her an 8-year-old right in front of him? "Let's call it a day then. See you later, Mrs. Jenny." "And you, Mr. Asher," Jenny replied. She followed him out the door and watched as he hopped into his Lexus SUV and started the engine. Soon enough, he was out of sight. With a smile on her lips, Jenny slammed the door shut and headed inside, only to be treated to a sour expression on her children's faces. "What's wrong?" she asked, startled. "Nothing," the both said in unison, as if they've been practicing that for a while now. Jenny's eyes narrowed. They were keeping something from her, but she knew her children well. Whenever they seal their lips, it's almost impossible to pry it open. Throughout dinner Leah was surprisingly silent. She just made curt responses and was all dismissive. Trevor knew something aside from their mom's flirting case was weighing her down. Something seemed to be bothering her. "Thanks for the meal, I'm going to bed," Leah said, dumped her half-eaten meal on the sink and left, leaving everyone stunned. "What's with your sister?" their mom asked, concerned. "Her daughter's countenance lately has been nothing but stable." "Don't know," Trevor shrugged innocently, digging into his food. Leah walked into her room and shut the door, making sure to lock it firmly. She turned and swallowed a scream when she saw a familiar figure sitting on her bed, leg crossed over the other. Asher? She called, sheer disbelief on her face. What took you so long? He asked nonchalantly and stood to his feet. What are you doing in my room by this time of the night? She asked back, cautious of his intentions this time. What do you think if not for us to have a private chat? What do you mean? She asked, walking into her room less tensed than earlier. You can think of it as a brief Q&A session. Her gaze flickered with surprise when they took their seats on opposite sides of her bed simultaneously. So, did you have a great time with my mom? His back went rigid upon hearing that. Was this the beginning of the question and answer session? He looked up and saw two burning blue orbs staring at him intensively. Asher's breath hitched, his throat dried, and for the first time, he found swallowing to be a huge problem. Even though her question was simple and modest, he couldn't help but feel an enormous number of concealed knives heading his way. She wasn't testing but tempting him. He studied her for a moment, then began, choosing his words carefully. Your mother was a good company. Leah narrowed her eyes at him. Really? Just that? Asher smirked, a glint of mischief in his eyes. I'm afraid that's your second question and my turn to ask. She frowned. Has the game began? It began the moment you asked a question. Asher answered the moment he saw the confusion on her face. Leah frowned. Did she ask a question already? Oh. All right, ask yours. Asher suddenly climbed in further into the bed, lounging on his foremans and startling the poor girl. What are you doing? She asked, all panicky. Asher rolled his eyes. Relax, I'm not going to do anything to you, unless you want me to, he said, a warm tease in his voice. Leah felt the urge to slap that smug smile off his face. He drew close to her, his face mere inches away from hers. He stared straight into her eyes and asked, were you jealous? Leah was literally thrown off balance. She never expected that question. She looked up and saw the tugging smile on his lips and knew he asked this on purpose. He was trying to riffle her emotions and she hated it. She took a deep breath and released it slowly. I wasn't jealous, he accused, liar, and leaned forward while Leah leaned back uncomfortably. She was sitting on the edge of the bed and would probably fall off if not careful. She gritted her teeth and shot him a 1,000-watt glare. What makes you think so? This is your question, he said, a teasing edge to his voice. Her chest was heaving with emotion, internally boiling with anger. This was a game and he was playing and controlling her to his rhythm. She was his puppet dancing to his tune. What makes me think so? He still pressed forward, but this time she held still since leaning backward would be falling off the bed. Amusement played in the depths of his eyes. She was like a cornered rat, with no more holes to run into and hide. Your voice, it's curious and sharp, your eyes, blazing and murderous, your heart, pounding and unstable. That's how I know, he whispered into her ears, sending shivers down her spine. His words reached deep inside her, momentarily stunning her, but thanks to that distraction, she lost her balance. She threw her arms around his neck in a haste, hoping it would break her fall, but she miscalculated her weight and the momentum, instead successfully brought the both of them to the ground. Asher lay on top of her, his weight fully crushing her. He immediately tried to stand, but her arms held him tight, refusing to let go, leaving him confused. My turn, she said boldly, giving him a hint of what was about to come. So he adjusted his body, making sure his weight rested on his arms and not on her. Since she likes this position, why not give in to her, especially with the way her breath kept caressing his lips? Are you my mate? She asked straightforwardly. Whatever burning passion he was experiencing shattered at once. He tried to get off her, but her hold on him refused to budge at all. The girl was persistent. Answer me, she insisted, tightening her grip on him. No, he said blandly. She scoffed. Liar, I'm not your mate, but your real mate is out there searching and missing you, he answered firmly, hands curled into fist and a tinge of burning fury in his heart. I don't believe you. Leah shook her head. Like I care. Oh, you do care, she retorted, looking him in the eyes. I see the way you look at me, the longing, the burning passion in your eyes. He interrupted. Then you've being deceived by looks. No, she persisted. Dan told me only mates stare at each other that way. He gave her a ridiculing smile. I'm sorry, but you're stupid for believing a fool. She winced at the coarseness of his voice, but chose to believe he was being evasive on purpose. And I believe it's time for you to let go, he said decisively. Leah felt something was wrong and looked down. To her shock, she discovered they were levitating in the air. The guy was using his ability. Before she could say a word, she felt herself falling and landed on her bed with a thud. You! She gasped, wagging a finger at him, and tried to sit up, but he pressed her back on the bed before putting something around her neck. She was about to give full vent to her frustrations in an outburst when she felt something cold rest on her neck. She looked down only to discover it was a necklace. Never leave for any place without that necklace unless you want to turn all bloodthirsty creatures around you into a feeding frenzy, he warned with his hands tucked in his pocket, and watched as she admired the necklace. It was a silver-colored necklace artistically crafted in the shape of a teardrop. It was beautiful. I went into a lot of trouble to get that from Sabrina, so lose it and I'll set you straight. Leah frowned at him. What kind of guy would gift a girl a necklace, rather than shower her with sweet nothings, threatens her with punishment instead? Now sleep, he commanded, and tucked her warmly under the covers as if she were a child. At first, Leah thought she was going to have problems sleeping tonight considering what she went through today, but surprisingly, her eyelids began to droop. Soon enough she was sound asleep. Watching her sleep, Asher's jaw tightened, and in his eyes were a flash of envy. No matter how much he desired, she wasn't his. Do you think we can trust him? He asked, plunking down on the nearest seat he could find in Daniel's office. Why do you ask? Daniel asked, staring at the window, watching the pack members going about their business. Judith doesn't trust him, came his reply. He reached out and grabbed a piece of cookie from the cookie jar resting on top of Daniel's mahogany desk. Nobody trusts Asher, he's unstable as the sea. Daniel turned around only to catch Ryan stealing his cookies. Again? What? Ryan shrugged and grabbed a handful of cookies before it was snatched away from his grasp. Daniel swore, a displeased scowl printed on his face. He closed the cookie lid tightly, pulled out one of his desk drawers, tossed it inside and shoved the drawer shut. There was an aggrieved expression on Ryan's face. He was as sullen as a 9-year-old whose candy was snatched by a big bad bully. Well, who could blame him? The Alpha's specially made cookies were the most delicious cookie he had ever tasted, notwithstanding he has a sweet tooth. No, he growled. Let's get back to business, Daniel ordered, and Ryan resumed his get down to business mode immediately. Something is fishy, Ryan confessed, munching on a cookie. Daniel looked up, interested. What is fishy? Ryan's expression was suspicious, the way he lit up at the mention of your mate's name. Daniel's eyes flashed with raw emotion and his jaw tightened as he retorted, "What are you trying to say?" Ryan sighed. "I'm not trying to be rude or insinuative here, but I think Asher might have a bit of history with your mate." Daniel's eyes narrowed and this time, closed. He clenched his jaw so hard the muscles ticked, a hint of denial in his eyes. "It's impossible, she just came into this town weeks ago." "Well, if you say so," Ryan said, pursing his lips. Daniel saw the displeased look on his friend's face and clenched his fist. Maybe he was right. The Asher he knew was always on guard, but in the spur of the moment, he lost control and his mask cracked. No matter how much he wants to deny it as nothing, the nagging feeling at the pit of his stomach told him it was something more. He saw the raw emotion on Asher's face. He was shocked, aggrieved, as if something precious was taken from him, and finally anger before he resumed his usual poker face. Daniel suddenly wondered if his mate was the precious thing taken from him. Even if they did had history together, he grunted, finally acknowledging the possibility of that happening. "She's my mate and would feel the mate bond once we meet, so whatever history they had is nothing but the past," he said, grounding his teeth in fury while his eyes flashed with murderous intent. "Moreover, Asher is smart, he wouldn't jeopardize the safety of his clan for a girl who isn't his mate," Daniel said, trying to comfort his heart. He couldn't bear to think of what Asher could have done with his mate in private. Had his mate fallen for his bewitching charms? It was no foreign news there was a dangerous and heart-stirring sensuality about vampires, especially with one as devilishly handsome as Asher. Even him had to admit, the guy almost bewitched him once, which gave him all the reason to hate his guts more, so he couldn't exactly blame the poor girl. "Then, I guess you have to make your move at once," Ryan reminded him. Daniel nodded. Yes, he would make his move. In a dimly lit smoky hall that spoke of eeriness, a cloaked woman sitting on an intricate-looking vintage throne asked, "How's the plan going, Emily?" "Your ladyship." The blonde tomboy stepped out of a line-up of hooded figures whom had their heads bowed. "It's going as planned. Her vampire side has been activated, and if luck is on our side, her wolf should be awake soon." A creepy smile appeared on the ladyship's face. She cooed, "Oh, don't worry, luck is on our side, your ladyship. What if our body can't accommodate?" "Her body would accommodate all. She would accomplish what our mighty queen couldn't." She raised a questioning brow. "Besides, why do you think she is called the perfect vessel?" Emily nodded. She understood now. The girl was a powerhouse. She could house and accommodate all those powers, something their queen couldn't do. "How's her mates doing?" her ladyship asked, a hint of mockery in her tone. "They are oblivious of the fact that they belong to her and not the other way around, though her vampire mate is quite smart and seems to be catching on to something. Unfortunately, unlike the vampire, the dumb werewolf thinks she belongs to him alone. Typical egoistic possessive werewolves," Emily said in sheer mockery, rolling her eyes towards heaven. Her ladyship smiled at Emily's comical face. The girl could be cynical at times. She sighed and rubbed her jaw reflectively. "I wonder if the plot is moving too slow. Perhaps we should spice things up a bit." "No, your ladyship." Emily was quick to refute, earning a look from her. She realized at once she acted a bit out of line. "I'm sorry, your ladyship, but I think the plot is moving on a normal pace. I just don't want us to be in a haste and make a wrong move." Emily tried to explain, hoping her ladyship would see sincerity and sense in her words. "Fine then, "My ever-wise Emily," her ladyship said, and stood from the throne. "But the werewolf?" She started. "He's too boring. Make him palatable." Emily shivered when she heard the word palatable. The werewolf was surely going to have a bumpy week. Her ladyship licked her lips, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "The vampire seems exciting enough. Perhaps it's time I paid him a visit." "Long live your ladyship!" They all bowed and chorused as she made her exit. Leah stirred, but her eyes were still clamped shut. She still wanted rest. But why did her bed feel so hard? She shivered involuntarily when a cold wind hit her and tried to cling to any source of warmth, to no avail. Weird, did she leave her French doors open? "Just go to sleep, Leah." She sprang up at once when she felt something wet touch her eyes. "What?" Leah groaned when the sun hit her eyes and lifted a hand to shield the poor thing. She quickly surveyed her environment. Where the hell was she? All she could see was tall trees, vines, and shrubs which looked exactly like "Oh my God!" She shrieked. She was in that god-forsaken woods. Again. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Leah began to hyperventilate. She was panicking. There were a lot of questions running amok in her head right now, enough to drive her crazy. How did she get here? No, how did she know here? After the attack, she swore she couldn't retrace her step back here if asked to, 'cause she mysteriously found herself on her bed after that incident. Why didn't she mysteriously appear on her bed this time? No. Did she sleepwalk to this place? How was that possible? Why was this happening? Leah looked down and shrieked at the sight. She was a total mess. Her hair was stiff and sticking out in all direction. There was mud baked in her fingernails, barefooted with dirty muddy legs, not to talk of her clothes. Leah wasn't putting on any clothes. She was very shocked to find herself in nothing but her birthday suit while her clothes lay, a shredded pile a few meters away. She knew instinctively something weird went down last night. Did she sleepwalk to this place on all fours? Leah had to admit she was more scared of what must have happened last night than when she discovered she was a vampire. But she was relieved there wasn't blood on her body, nor bloodied and broken bodies lying in askew positions before her, else she would have gone bananas. She had watched enough horror movies to realize, that's what happens when a supernatural like her mysteriously finds herself naked in the woods. They wolf out, like literally, not metaphorically, and it's quite funny. She's not a werewolf but a vampire. Just shut up, Leah. Okay, let's calm down, Leah tells her speeding heart. The most important task at hand was not leaving the wood but finding a cloth to wear and leave the woods. She glared at her wasted clothes and wondered what had drove her gaga enough to shred all her clothings to pieces. No matter how much she tried, she couldn't remember a thing. The relentless chirping of the birds told her it was daybreak. Thankfully, the sun wasn't up yet, so it was probably a few minutes after 6 in the morning, enough time to go home and prepare for school. Leah wasn't worried about leaving the woods. In fact, she was confident she could use her exceptional senses and find her way out. But naked? Nay, she'll pass. Suddenly, her ears perked up when she heard the rustling sound of nearing footsteps. Somebody scratched that. Some people were here. Thanks to her improved hearing, she could make out 2 or 3 movements and they were coming her direction. Gracefully, she leaped and climbed a tall tree with wide canopy enough to camouflage her from the intruder's penetrative eyes. Hiding from such a great height, she zoomed in on the approaching figures, and just as she thought they were 3 in number, 2 guys and a female. Each of them were armed to the teeth with cameras, binoculars, and guidebooks. They looked like tourists. So she relaxed knowing they posed no threat to her. In fact, she was the threat to them at the moment. She needed clothes and they were wearing clothes. Problem solved. A malevolent smile spread on her face. She just needed one person. The female was wearing a grey cargo pant with light blue long-sleeved jacket and a day pack strapped to her back. She was looking around and taking notes of something. Leah took a closer look. The woman was observing birds. Wait a minute, Leah realized. The trio were bird watching. She saw one of the male who had a much sturdy build raise the binoculars to his eyes, scanning across the scene carefully. He was wearing a wide-brimmed hat, same grey cargo pants with the lady, a brown long-sleeved shirt and a birding vest with lots of large pockets. They must be a couple, she thought. But Leah preferred the other guy. He was tall, dark, and handsome and wearing a pale long-sleeved shirt, long pant, sun-blocking gloves, and a waist pack with a long strap that reaches bandolier style across his chest and one shoulder. Just like a predator, she fixed her eyes on her prey, watching and waiting for the perfect time to strike. Suddenly the couple decided to take their birding to another part of the woods, leaving the pretty guy who was immersed in his photographing all to himself. Perfect. Swiftly, she dropped to the ground with a soft thud. Startled, pretty guy whirled around and a single punch knocked the daylight out of him. Leah lit up with excitement. She didn't put too much force into the punch yet this guy was out cold but breathing, thankfully. Just how strong was she? Leah checked his waist pack to see if she could find a spare cloth, but what greeted her were insect repellent, snacks, and a small ground cloth. Leah shook her head sympathetically and muttered, "I'm sorry pretty guy, but ladies first." Then she stripped him of all his clothing save his boxer shorts and gloves while she used the ground cloth to cover what's left of his modesty. "This is my apology," she said and kissed him on the forehead after resting his back against a tree trunk. Then she was speed running out of the woods, trusting her instincts on which route to take until she was finally out. It was a few minutes after 7 by the time she arrived home, and her mom was already by the doorway waiting for her with arms folded across the chest and a huge dark expression on her face. "Where have you been?" Jenny attacked Leah immediately, not even giving her the chance to catch her breath. "I went for a run," she replied, enough sweat on her body to prove her claim. "Looking like that?" Her mom raised a questioning brow. Leah realized at once she was still a mess even after she changed clothes. She forgot the muddy smears on her face and the rest of her body. No wonder people were staring at her awkwardly on her way home. "Trust me, Mom, it's a long story." "Ugh." Leah groaned, palming her ears when the bell signaling lesson over rang. Her eardrums almost exploded. Why was her ears extra sensitive today? A high-pitched voice came from beside Leah, causing her to groan again. She could feel a heavy migraine coming. She turned to see who wanted to destroy her eardrums. "Hi Leah, I'm Cheryl," the girl introduced herself enthusiastically. Leah wasn't surprised the girl Cheryl knew her name, cause after yesterday's beef with Caroline, she gained a bit of fame. Now she was what high schoolers would call popular. Yet, she was now among the popular kids in school, falling just below Caroline when it comes to the popularity rank. "Not that she cared anyway, Leah, as you know," she replied blandly, her hands pressed on her temple. Right now, she wasn't feeling too good to accept pleasantries. I love your eyes, it's so cool. Cheryl squealed excitedly. Leah winced. Was this girl's voice a mic? Why was it so loud? Thanks, but if you don't mind. Leah tried to dismiss her, but the girl apparently wasn't done. I've never seen this shade of magenta before, can you please refer me to where you purchased it? Leah drew her brows. Purchase what? Cheryl gestured with her hands. Your eye contacts. Oh, Leah realized numbly, the girl thought it was contacts. It's not contacts but my eye color actually. Leah tried to explain, it was up to the girl to believe it or not. Actually my eyes does this thing as I've researched, my blue eyes turn magenta whenever I feed on blood. Cheryl blinked repeatedly, what's she talking about? You mean hey, someone called, interrupting Cheryl while Leah pressed both hands onto her temple this time. The loud mouth was back. What do you think you're doing? Trying to snatch my position in my goddess heart? Ben accused, literally shooting lasers from his eyes as he sandwiched himself in between Leah and Cheryl. If there was a creature Leah couldn't understand the reason for its existence, it was probably this specimen called Ben. The guy was so unreasonably possessive of her even though they just met yesterday. Ben was the one who showed her around the school. Ever since then, he latched himself to her side claiming BFF. Excuse me, who are you? Cheryl asked, confused and stunned at the guy's absurd character. Her one and only best friend. Ben tossed his head back challengingly. And the argument began. Leah quietly left the two bickering idiots whom were unaware that the subject of their argument had left already. She approached her locker and lay against it. She felt sick, which was quite strange. Wasn't she a vampire? Do vampires get sick? What have we here? Someone taunted from behind and Leah almost went bananas. What's with everyone today? Why couldn't they just leave her alone? Caroline. Leah breathed without turning around. Her nose was hyperactive today on picking up scents. Ow, what's wrong with you today? Caroline mocked. In? Sing-song. Surprisingly, she didn't come with her two minions. Leah ignored her. She was having this burning frenzy inside her to rip that pretty face of hers apart. Get lost. She growled at her, hoping that dumb Barbie will take that as a cue to leave. Leah couldn't understand what was happening to her, but she had a feeling it was going to get ugly soon. Unfortunately, Caroline was called dumb for a reason. Why? Caroline laughed. Cat got your tongue? Leah could feel her control slipping. Her breathing was labored while her fingernails began to thicken, and to her shock, it became hook and pointed. Her claws made a grinding sound as it scratched down her locker. The voices around her were amplified, driving her crazy, most especially Caroline's. Caroline's voice was loud and taunting. It was audaciously challenging her. The little thing was challenging her? She would snap her into two. Caroline shivered when she heard a feral growl come from the girl, but she waved it off. What could she do? She was just a small human, moreover she had Asher as backup. But the words got stuck in her throat when Leah turned around. It was just for a split second, but Caroline couldn't mistake those eyes, glowing magenta eyes and claws. Oh my God! She realized at once, the girl was a supernatural. Like Asher. Leah had turned with one purpose, claw the girl's eyes out, but instead, someone intercepted her plan. Dan came out of nowhere and hugged the girl, hiding her hideous appearance from the eyes of the curious onlookers. He couldn't help but feel something was wrong with the girl. Her incredulous sharp claws dug into his arms drawing blood, but he didn't give it much thought and slowly moved her away from prying eyes. When Leah could comprehend what was going on, they were already inside Asher's office. She looked around realizing Dan was the one she had clawed instead. She stared down hard at her black, talon-like nails and began to panic. Though she didn't spend much time with Dan, but she was sure his pointed yet sharp vampiric nails weren't monstrously looking as hers. A/N, just give the poor girl a break already, she's doing a lot of panic these days. Help me, Leah cried out. She was afraid of what she was becoming. She didn't nor could she understand what was going on with her. She just wants to be normal. Leah's voice trailed off when Dan suddenly dropped to the ground with a heavy thud. There was a shocked expression on Asher's face. Next, he left whatever he was doing, shoved her aside and ran to his aid. Leah knew whatever was happening to Dan was probably because of her. A tear slipped down her face. She's a monster. Asher was restless. He kept pacing up and down in his office. Today was the D-Day as agreed. He was going to hand the girl over to Daniel. But he was reluctant, inasmuch as he believes that the feelings he had for her were fake. He didn't want to let her go. This was the first time in his 700 years of existence he felt something akin to a mate bond. Even though he wouldn't show it, but he longs to have his mate too. Though he has had his own fair share of women over the years, but nor of it was strong as what he felt with the girl, even though it was just for a fleeting moment. His hand unconsciously moved to his neck where the girl bit him. The mark was still there. It was the only scar on his body that refused to fade away. The girl clearly marked him, proving he was her mate, but then Daniel? It was impossible to have two mates. It has never been seen since the beginning of time. One of them had to be the fake one. There was no such thing as one having two mates, but Daniel didn't seem fake either. They had provided evidence, narrated what happened, the curse week and all. Moreover, he had listened to their heartbeat. None of them were lying. The evidence was solid, so it had to be Daniel, the real mate. The witches must have toyed with him, Asher thought. Placed some sort of hex on him unawares, leading him to believe the girl was his other half. Though he couldn't come up with a reasonable explanation for the mark, but he was sure the witches had something to do with that. Again. The sharp ringing of his phone snapped him out of his thoughts. He frowned, realizing it was a private number, but he picked up nevertheless. Asher speaking, he said, and waited patiently for the person on the other end of the line to speak up. There was a long pained silence, but the faint labored breathing told Asher who was on the line before the voice came in. "It's me, Daniel." Asher gulped deeply. It was time. He shut his eyes and clutched his cell phone tight, almost crushing the poor thing. "I'll send her over to you after no," Daniel said. "Hey? No? No what?" he asked, confused. Keep her with you for the moment," Daniel stammered. It took every strength he had to say those words to the vampire, especially after knowing he had taken a fancy to his mate. Asher removed the phone from his ears to check the number. He wanted to confirm he was still speaking with the same person. "Why?" was all Asher asked. It was strange, Daniel of all creature asking him to keep his mate for a while. Something bad must have happened. It was worth knowing that werewolves were extremely possessive creatures and that trait is amplified when it comes to their mate. They would not even tolerate a male of their own kind staring at their mate, talk more another species. Something disastrous must have happened for Daniel to request such a thing. "There's a strange disease ravaging my pack," I have 8 deaths on my hands already and still counting. The humans in my pack hasn't shown the symptoms yet, so I can't tell whether it affects humans or not, but I can't risk her getting infected," Daniel explained, concern and apprehension etched deeply in his voice. Asher was supposed to be happy. After all, he gets to have more uninterrupted time with the girl. Who knows when the disease would be cured anyway. But when he heard Daniel's explanation, he felt this huge lump in his throat and a painful sensation in his still heart. Contrary to what he deluded himself into thinking, Daniel cared about the girl deeply, to the extent he was willing to leave her to his enemy if it meant her safety was assured. Asher wasn't a fool. He knew Daniel must have sensed his usual relationship with the girl on the day he visited his office. That day he had exposed himself by letting his emotions get the better of him. Yet the guy still wanted him to take care of his mate. Asher snorted. Unlike Daniel, he wasn't that righteous. "Aren't you afraid I might snatch her away?" Asher asked on purpose. There was a short laugh before a response came. "I might not know you much, Asher, but I know you love your clan more than anything else." Asher listened, jaw clenched. His clan was his greatest weakness, but what nobody knew was that the girl's position in his heart was beginning to threaten that. It was beginning to scare him, that one day he might really choose the girl over his clan. Moreover, Daniel continued, "There's no amount of attraction the mate bond can't defeat, so quit trying to trifle my emotions. You've lost already." Daniel spat mercilessly. Asher's heart sank. The werewolf was right. He was fighting a losing battle, but he would never admit that to that proud alpha. "We'll see then," Asher said. "Fine by me," Daniel agreed, and was about to cut the line when he remembered something. "Aha, just to remind you, the girl might be in transition." Asher's eyes lit up. He was beyond stunned when he heard the alpha's words. He stuttered at once. "Why, you know?" "Of course I know. How do you think I lost connection with her initially? I think a rogue must have bitten her. So you probably know how dangerous she is to you at the moment." Asher's head buzzed with confusion. What the hell was Daniel talking about? "What do you mean?" he wanted to ask, but the line went dead immediately. He tried recalling, but it wasn't connecting at all. Asher has never been more confused in his entire life as he was right now. The thoughts running amok in his head was enough to drive him insane. What did Daniel mean by the girl must have been bitten by a rogue? He thought Daniel was about to confess he knew about the girl being a converted vampire. Everything was just insane. If Daniel knew the girl was a vampire, then it would create more problems. Never in history has a vampire being mated to a werewolf. It has never been told of. Though there was rumors, wishful and fetish fantasies of vampires getting together with werewolves, but nor of it involves being mates. There was a huge difference between a werewolf getting attracted to a vampire and a werewolf having a vampire as a mate. He initially wanted the girl to keep the fact she was some sort of vampire away from Daniel when they finally meet, since she wasn't exactly like other converts, and watch how things unfold. But now? He didn't know what to think anymore, but he chose to believe Daniel must have made some sort of mistake. He was thinking about that when he suddenly felt a familiar presence. He looked up. It was Dan and the girl. Speak of the devil! But something was wrong. The girl was shivering fervently and staring at her hands with horror. That's when he saw it. Claws? But hers were much larger and hooked, talon-like and black in color. "Oh my God," Asher breathed. Daniel was right, and couldn't have been more right when Dan suddenly collapsed. His eyes widened and his stomach clenched. He shoved past the girl and rushed at Dan. His breath hitched when he saw Dan convulsing and vomiting black blood from his mouth. He immediately lifted Dan's sleeves and was shocked to discover Dan's veins were black, a very thick black in color. Asher heard the girl gasp behind him, but he ignored her and instead began to trace the blackish veins and found it on his other arm too. She poisoned him. What's wrong with him? Leah asked Asher when she couldn't take the silence anymore. Venom, Asher answered curtly and turned Dan to his side. He had tore off the guy's shirt and discovered the veins were all heading to his heart while Dan kept writhing in pain. I did this, didn't I? Leah asked, staring at the talons that refused to go away. Asher didn't give her a reply, inasmuch as it was the girl's fault. She didn't do it knowingly. If you don't want to make yourself useful, get out, Asher replied, or you can go to the left side of my desk, open the second drawer and get me a cutter knife. He saw a trace of confusion in the girl's eyes. She didn't expect that from him, probably thought he was heap a truckload of blame on her. Moisture touched Leah's eyes, but she blinked the tears away and headed to Asher's desk. Guilt gnawing at her, she ripped the drawer open and found the utility knife as he described. She handed it to him and knelt beside him, wondering what he was about to do. Asher took the folding utility knife and placed the tip of the extended blade under the skin on the thumb side of Dan's wrist, and was about to cut in when the girl grabbed his hand. What are you doing? Leah asked grimly, eyes flashing with suspicion. Saving his life, Asher replied and jerked her hand, but her grip was strong. He frowned. Since when did she become this protective of Dan? She was eyeing him seriously, just like a mother hen watching over her chicks. If I don't let him bleed out, this werewolf venom will destroy him inside out, Asher explained and sighed when he saw the shocked expression on her face. He didn't want to tell her yet, but she forced his hands. As if to prove his point, Dan let out a pain scream, stunning the girl. Gradually her grip loosened, but she made no attempt to move, but the little space mercifully granted to him was enough to do what he wanted. Hold him tight, keep him from moving, he commanded Leah when Dan started contorting and trashing around in pain. Asher understood how dangerous werewolf venom were to vampires, just as theirs were dangerous to werewolves too. The feeling was akin to one being thrown into a burning molten lava. One feels excruciating pain of fire, an agonizing burning sensation that covers and gnaws at every bit of cell in your body. Werewolf venom, will spread through the bloodstream painfully. After that the vampire will begin to cough up blood and hallucinate, eventually dying rabid and paranoid. Locating his ulnar artery, the knife sliced into Dan's skin, making a long and deep gash while Leah tried her best to hold him down, especially now he was getting physical. Asher expertly located major arteries in his body and began to slash at them, and in no time Dan has bled almost 2 liters of blood. Leah let him go when he became still. She lay flat on her back, breathing heavily. She felt as if she just fought for a world heavyweight championship. The guy was insanely strong. It was a huge torture keeping her monstrous talons away from him and restricting him at same time. Asher stared down at his hands. It was soaked with blood, black blood, not to talk of his office floor. He'll have to do an intensive cleaning later. Dan was eventually calm. He had bled out most of the venom and thus the tormenting episode was over. The little remaining will be flushed out when he feeds. Talk of feeding. Asher had to get him out of here and get him to feed soon. Dan had lost half of his blood and would be thirsty to the point of madness for blood. And being in a school full of humans wasn't a wise choice either. so he had to get him out of here as soon as possible. Leah, help me get. Asher trailed off when he realized the girl was no longer around. He looked around, she was nowhere to be found, but he caught a strong whiff of her scent, meaning it hasn't been a while she left. He was about to focus his attention on Dan when something clicked in his head and his eyes widened at once. God! He groaned and went after the stupid girl. Leah looked down, she knew she wouldn't die if she jumped off the ledge, she had tried that with Dan already. Speaking of Dan, the guy was just trying to help her, yet she repaid him with evil. He almost lost his life because of her. She snorted mirthlessly, staring down at her talons that refused to disappear. What was she exactly? If she wasn't a human, vampire, werewolf? What was she then? A monster? Leah tossed her head back. Of course a monster. Maybe she did deserve to live, else she would keep hurting her loved ones just like she did to Dan. Maybe, death was better. If a fall from a great height wouldn't kill her, perhaps a stake to the heart then? Classic vampire killing style, but unfortunately, a wooden stake wasn't available and it would a while for her to get one. Then her black talons got her attention. She stared at it curiously. If this only could poison Dan to the point of almost losing his life, what would happen if she used it to rip her heart out? Tempted and determined, she closed her eyes tightly and positioned her talons to her chest. She was about to carry out her plan when she felt something knock her to the ground. Not something but someone. Asher traced the girl using her scent only to discover her on the school's rooftop ledge about to commit suicide. He knocked her down, trapping her with his body, and roared at her, "What do you think you're doing?" She struggled with him, clawing, blinding with her talons. "Let me go, just let me end this pathetic life of mine." With whose permission? He spat in rage, barely dodging his face from being clawed at. He continued. "Fine, let's say I let you die, what about your family? Have you thought about the pain and agony your death would put them through? Have you thought about the loss the school would suffer when the news of a new student committing suicide surfaces? Have you thought about me, who has been risking his life and clan trying to help you?" Leah was stunned, the intensity of his words hitting her hard. She didn't know how to answer his questions, it was touching and weird. She wondered whom thinks about the loss a school's encounters when committing suicide on school grounds? Slowly she showed him her talons. She choked. "I can't make them go away." Asher could have breathed in relief if he still had a beating heart. Nevertheless, he smiled instead and got off her. "Easy, it's retractable," he said when she got to her feet. "Just imagine your nails being back to normal." Leah gave him a stupid look. "Really? Just try it," he persuaded her as she reluctantly closed her eyes. He watched her breathing and frowned. She wasn't trying hard enough. "This is stupid," Leah complained, throwing her hands up in disappointment when nothing happened after a while. "Concentrate, Leah," he commanded. "Here, let my voice guide you," he said, and placed both of his hands on her ears. Leah had to admit, she liked the way his cold hand felt on her skin and his voice. It was warm and sultry, vibrating just at the right pitch. "Get rid of every distraction," his voice continued. His voice was a distraction already, she mused inwardly, but knew she had to concentrate before Asher becomes grumpy pants again. Leah followed his direction and began to picture her fingers. She felt something stir inside when she imagined her talons shifting back to her nails. "Good," Asher complimented as she slowly opened her eyes. She looked down and gasped, realizing her nails were back to normal. With constant practice, you will be able to willfully. The rest of his words were forever lost when she suddenly jumped and wrapped her arms around him out of excitement. Oh my God! I did it! She screamed, still jumping up and down enthusiastically, rubbing her body against Asher unknowingly in places that would cause one to blush red. Asher swallowed deeply. The girl was dangerously tugging at his self-control, and the funny part was that she wasn't even aware of it. He gripped her waist tightly, trying to steady her, but the girl apparently was a lost cause, until his nail dug into her skin as he fought for control. Leah froze when she realized how close their bodies were pressed together. What the hell had she been doing? She screamed mentally. She swallowed nervously when she saw Asher's green orbs had turned a darker shade. She knew that look. She wanted to push away from him, but when he began to lean in, the ability to make a rational decision pulverized at once. She was sure he would have kissed her senseless if he hadn't stiffened at once. Next she knew, he ran out and she followed suit. Lessons were going on, so there was probably nobody in the hallways, but Asher headed to his office speedily. There was a nagging feeling in his belly, and it was confirmed the moment he stepped into his office. Dan was gone. Ben grumbled and stumbled as he walked down the hallway. He still couldn't believe his goddess left him to deal with that scrounger called Cheryl all by himself. She tricked him, humph. But he missed her. Where could she have gone? He had been searching for her since break period, all to no avail. She was the only real friend he has, even though they knew each other just a day ago, but he felt drawn to her. She was unlike his other classmates, who avoids and treats him like some sort of freak just because his ideologies differs from theirs. So he sneaked out of class just to search for her. What a royal friend he was. Leah, he whispered, eyes darting around as he searched thoroughly. He had checked the gym, locker room, storage room, staff room, but still couldn't find her. It was as if she vanished into thin air. He had already decided to give up when he made out a silhouette leaning beside a locker. He squinted his eyes, trying to figure out who that could be. Dan? Dan, he called and walked towards the pale pretty boy who looked like he was dragged out of a muddy swamp. There was this black gooey stuff that looked a lot like thick blood smeared all over his long-sleeved shirt. Oh right. The drama club had a color mixing experiment with paint today, Ben remembered. The boy must have gotten involved with them. After all, every club leader wanted him in their group. Hey, Ben said, looking the boy over. His eyes were sullen and his pale complexion was a lot more chalky than usual. He looked sick. You all right? He asked, concerned over his appearance, but Dan simply fell on him, resting all his weight on the poor boy's shoulder. Ben was nearly buckling under the weight of Dan, which wasn't surprising. The boy was 2 times taller and muscular than him. God, you're crushing me, Ben complained, trying to adjust and steady his sagging weight, but Dan was oblivious to all this. Instead, his gaze was focused on the pulsing vein on Ben's neck. Ben was about to drag him to the school's nurse office when he felt a stabbing pain on his neck. He screamed and tried to push him away, but Dan latched onto him so tight he couldn't move a muscle. Almost immediately, he felt Dan's weight was taken off me and touched a hand to his neck and was shocked to find blood. What? He cursed when he saw his goddess at same time trying to restrain Dan, who had this rabid look on his face and fangs. Oh my God! That was his last word before he was knocked out cold. That went well, Leah said with heavy sarcasm when she saw the way Asher delivered a blow to Ben's head. Asher ignored her and took the struggling Dan from her grip. Stop, he growled in a dangerous tone at Dan, whom surprisingly, behaved. Leah was amazed. How did you do that? Perks of being a leader. Just like an alpha, the order is undisputable, he lied through his teeth. He had used his compulsion ability on Dan. Alphas order his butt. And I'm guessing your undisputable order can't work on those, she said, pointing to the surveillance cameras that was blinking red and had probably captured everything that went down moments ago. A smug smile captured his face. Don't worry, my men are in charge of those. Leah was stunned. There are other vampires here? She asked in a hushed tone, afraid somebody might be eavesdropping. Of course. Do you think purebloods and converts are the only vampire in this vicinity? Asher asked, scooped Ben up and draped him over his shoulder as if he weighed nothing. You should talk of hybrids, half human, half vampire, though they're rare species but definitely around, he explained and motioned with his eyes for Dan to tag along as they headed to his office. Which is why you shouldn't trust anyone you meet in this school, and most especially, people in Little Town. Anyone who lives in this town has one or two secrets to protect. Nobody is who they seem to be. Leah frowned. It seems a bit suspicious why their dad wanted them of all places to be here, a town that wasn't even his birthplace. As if they knew anything about his birthplace, she scorned. The black pool of blood was still resting in the center of his office when they arrived. Asher simply waved his hand and the black liquid dissipated into the atmosphere, leaving only a black stain behind. Leah was awed by the scene. If all vampires had special abilities, she wondered what was hers. Though she was skeptical of possessing an ability since no one could even tell what she was. But she was also thankful Asher's secretary was off duty today, else she would have been scared out of her wits if she had witnessed everything that happened. That is, if she wasn't one of Asher's people too. Asher seemed to have lots of surprises stored for her. I'm sorry, Dan said, a heartbreaking, remorseful look on his face. I can't do anything about the hunger. It's just too much. Asher snorted, a laugh eliciting a scowl from Leah. Why was he laughing at Dan's predicament? Shouldn't he be sympathetic? He's lying, he's just luring you. All that matters to him at the moment is feeding, Asher explained. To prove that, Dan bared his sharp teeth dangerously at her when he discovered his plans were busted. What are you going to do? She asked, concerned. Thinking on how to get him blood. Animal blood can't do the magic at the moment. What he needs right now is pure human blood. He wiped his face with his hand, sighing. Unfortunately, most humans in Little Town is accepted and the tourist accounted for. Leah pursed her lips, thoughtfully. Can't you get a blood bag from a hospital? I can, but my hold on him will relapse thanks to his intense willpower, and I trust you can stand your own, but I don't trust an experienced bloodthirsty pure-blood vampire in a school full of humans. Asher made his point, eyes resting on the unconscious Ben sprawled on the ground carelessly, unaware he was sleeping in a den full of consuming lions. Then let him take mine. Asher's head jerked up. No, then do you have another option? She questioned. I know I'm still some sort of human even though my blood might not be pure anymore. So just let him take mine and save us the trouble. Asher's face contorted into an ugly scowl. If only she knew taking a vampire's blood that wasn't your mate was similar to committing adultery. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.